Hey everyone, Sam Dunn. I'm back in the banger hangar for Overkill reviews. I don't get in the Overkill reviews chair too often these days, but I'm in it today because there's a great album by a great band from right here in Toronto that I just got to spread the word about. Is a band called Mount Cyanide off a record called Mount Cyanide, one of my latest, newest favorite bands to come out this year, last year, actually for a few years, and maybe a little biased because I know some of the guys in the band. So here's a little mini history. The story of Mount Cyanide really starts with vocalist and bass player Nick Sewell. Nick has been really active in the metal rock underground scene in Toronto for a number of years, going back to his band Chort and then Illuminati, and more recently Biblical. This is a guy who's pretty prolific in pumping out some really interesting and pretty diverse forms of heavy music, sort of going from a more rock vibe to a more experimental vibe. He's covered a lot of ground over the last 10 to 15 years. The other key notable here is Jim Gehring, also a former member of Illuminati, who's handling the drum duties on the Mount Cyanide record. The newcomer, or newcomer to me anyway, is guitarist Christopher Blackwell, and this is from Nick, because I asked him, where's this guy from? He was in a 90s noise rock band called Gush Underdrive, which Jim, the drummer, also played in, and the band was later renamed to just the Underdrive. But anyway, enough backstory. Let's get into this record. First track on this record is called Malabar, and right out of the gates, it just kind of hits you with a really old school, circa 90s Norwegian black metal floating black metal blast beat riff, no holds barred right out of the gate. And the immediate thing that struck me about this record was the sound. Really amazing production on this record. Lots of nice separation between the drums, the bass, and the guitar. And I guess, can't do a review without talking about the bass, is that Nick is holding down some serious ground here on the bass. And the bass itself has a really strong melodic role, not only in the opening track Malabar, but in the record as a whole, which I'm biased, but I like, and it feels a little bit different, a little bit unique. But by the minute mark in Malabar, it totally shifts gears. It stops, and you enter this much more atmospheric halftime or double halftime part, and the band brings in a lot of atmospheric kind of sample stuff in and around the background. So you're sort of off the mark thinking this is a pretty straightforward black metal offering, but really quickly you realize that there's a lot more going on this album. Second track is called Roman Numerals. It continues basically in the same vein established on Malabar, a pretty noisy, dirty black metal vibe on this track. And one thing that really adds to that vibe, and I think really works on this record, is Nick's vocals. They're sitting very low in the mix, very kind of screechy background approach to these vocals. Reminds me of, early Dark Throne, even early Satyricon with that real raspy approach. I'm not going to go track by track on this album, but I do want to talk about track 3, Hidden Entrance, because that's when things completely shift gears. This is where the album begins to show its real breadth. It's an instrumental tune. It's much mellower. It's really showing some evocative, kind of gentle work on the guitar that really is a massive gear shift from the first 2 tracks. And you know what? It really works. Point in the record, around the midway point, it's actually only 8 tracks, 35 minutes. Would have loved a little bit more, but hey, it works. Don't overstay your welcome. It's starting to feel like if Fenriz and Mike Patton put a band together, it would sound something like this, because my impression initially was a lot of Bungle-esque influences, even a little bit of Faith No More in there. And when I asked Nick about it, he said, well, you're onto something. It's close, but no cigar. He was really going for kind of like a Fantomas director's cut, specifically, approach on this album. And it really works. I never would have thought that amalgamating that approach with a really pretty primitive and bleak black metal sound would ever work, but fucking works for me. Moving into the back half of the record, pretty much more of the same. A really nice balance between this really dirty, noisy, primitive black metal vibe and all of the kind of floating atmospherics. Standout tracks for me, Alternate Ending, which we posted up on BangerTV a while back. Love that song. And the last track, Too Many Past Lives, just a beautiful, creepy ending to this album, and I think it kind of all gets sealed by that song. And at the end of the day, such great sounds on this record. I haven't mentioned Jim's drumming. It really works on this album. He really knows how to shift from that, that kind of floating black metal feel, and then occasionally just really digging in on some hard riffs. The guitar work, is kind of, it feels a little bit in the background at times, but I like its place, because it's really just there. It seems mostly to add texture, and the simplicity of the playing is actually, I think, its real strength. This is not an album that ever feels overcrowded by ideas. It's really well paced. I mean, I mentioned, Dark Throne, Satyricon, Patton. I'm also getting occasionally some like ISIS vibes in here, and even at times, like if you could imagine sort of a black metal Mastodon, I'm hearing that as well. So what else am I gonna fucking say? It's a great record. Check the band out live. This is an unreleased album, so let's spread the word. This is a band, this is an album that deserves a decent platform. There's worse metal being made out there on bigger platforms, so hey, check out Mount Cyanide. I'm out of breath. It's 4.5 skulls out of 5 on Overkill Reviews.